Hello, hello. All right, this is an empowering little review, and it's called Empowering. I have been listening for only a month now. I had to start at the beginning of your episodes and hear all you guys have offered here. There's so much content that relates to my situation, and I feel I found the greatest gift of education. Thanks, Coby, for being real. Your emotions bring importance to your message. Ashlynn, your strength is empowering. I want to be like you when I grow up. And Brannon, I can definitely tell the Toastmasters has paid off in a huge way.
That's funny.
Seriously, I appreciate all the amazing knowledge you've shared. I was so stuck in my dysfunctional relationship, and I knew I needed to make changes, but never had the tools to do it until now. The future looks bright.
Awesome.
I know, I love it.
Yeah.
That's way cool.
Yeah, I still have a little work to go on my public speaking, but Toastmasters helped.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
awesome.
and we show up here, and although we don't edit, we say lots of things wrong, but hey, we're here.
right.
We're here.
Right. Should we jump right in?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Recovery work can become a drag. It can suck.
Amen.
And recovery work, in quotation marks, can be really counterproductive for actual recovery in several different ways. So that the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because I hear all the time, especially from the women that I work with, that I go to these groups, I meet with this therapist, I listen to this podcast or
Reading this book.
read this book or whatever they're doing, and they're like, I don't feel like I'm getting better, but I'm investing a ton of time, I'm investing a lot of money, and it's just like so they'll go to groups and they'll just feel like I go to this group and all that happens is I hear women complain about their lives, and they complain with each other and they validate each other in that.
And then it becomes true.
Yeah, and over again. And so there's a couple of things about that I want to say. One is that those groups are important, and that complaining that they're hearing actually is those women getting validation in their pain. So a lot of them need that at first. They need to go somewhere where somebody understands what they've been through and to validate them and say, yeah, we get how you feel. Because a lot of them have been alone in their relationship and just feeling stuck and not knowing what to do. So it feels really good to get that validation in your pain or in your anger or in your sadness. But long term, as you start to work your recovery and you're going through the grieving process, you're moving from anger, from depression into more acceptance, you start to not resonate there. And it starts to drag you back, and you don't want to continue to just wallow in those places. And that's where it can really become a drag. But that mixed with, look, this is what you're supposed to do. You should go to groups. You should go to certain therapists. You should do this. You should do that. So they want to be diligent, and they keep trudging forward in what they're doing, but it's just not working. It creates this thing where recovery actually is not helpful to healing. Recovery work is not helpful to healing. Have you guys seen this at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, and why is it more with women? I'm super curious that you said that. Or
Well-
the betrayed.
Well, I don't think it's more with the betrayed. I think it's different.
Okay.
What I see with them is it's more, I want to stay stuck in victim, and I want to stay stuck in anger and sadness. The addicts, they want to stay stuck, but they want to wallow in their shame.
Okay.
And they also want to blame their spouse. They want to stay stuck blaming everybody else for their problems. And so if they can find groups that will validate them in that, they'll stay stuck too.
Okay.
So yeah.
I'm thinking back to my own head at the beginning of all this, and I was mad that I had to do all these things. And so maybe that was part of it for me too, of the complaining. I shouldn't even have to do this stuff. This is your problem.
Right.
And it was extremely hard for us because we had a hard time finding babysitters and trusting there. And so to leave our children to go to therapy, to go to group was like, this other little punch and
Right.
like you're being a bad parent now
Right.
while
And
you're
so there's
trying to
guilt
work your
there
marriage.
as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I remember several times, when are we done with this? This is awful. I hated group, all
Mhm.
sorts of things. I specifically remember a friend who was years ahead in recovery than me said, "Oh, you should read this book." It was really helpful for me. So I went and bought the book, started reading it, and it made me feel awful. Like
Mhm.
I kept thinking, triggering thoughts and
Mhm.
started thinking Kobe must be doing these things that I'm reading about because it's stories of people acting out.
Betrayal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I remember
Sounds awful for what you
Right.
needed right then. Right.
Right. And so I told my therapist, I'm reading this book, and my friend said it was super good, but I hate it. It makes me feel really bad. And she said, "Well, why are you still reading it?" Well, because she told me that I should read it, that it was really helpful for her. And that's like the first time that she's like, "Ashlynn, go home and throw the book
Yeah.
away."
Yeah.
And I don't throw books away. Like, you give it away. I'll take it to the Goodwill. She's
Right.
no, throw it away. It's not working for you, and it may not work for a lot of people.
Right.
And so that was kind of the beginning of, oh, I don't have to do it the way the person ahead of me told me.
Exactly. And because you might be resonating in a totally different place when you start, and that's okay. And there's times and seasons in recovery.
Mhm.
You know, at some point that book might have been really helpful to you. Right then where you were at,
The
that was the
beginning.
last thing that you needed. Yeah, the beginning of it all.
It just caused a lot of
Right.
futurizing and spike.
But think about it, Ashlyn. So I like your story. So I don't even want to go. This sucks. How can we have to spend the time and money and time? So if you were to go to a group where there were, let's say, 3 or 4 other women in there who are pissed off because they have to be there and their husbands suck and why do I have to do it? Feels good. It's like, wow, like I'm not the only one that's like has to deal with this crap in my life, you know. And so you'll connect. You'll feel some empathy and connection in that, and that's good. Um, but you'll create that energy of a victim. You'll create that energy of like, my life sucks, and this feels really good that people know that our lives suck together. After a while, as you start working your recovery, you realize that's not actual peace. That's not actual healing. And you're going to say, okay, like I'm kind of tired of just complaining about my life or about my husband or about whatever. And some of the women or some of the people will want to stay there, and that's where you'll feel some dissonance or just you'll feel some level of, I don't know if I want to just keep going back doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
I'm ready to move forward to something different.
That was another place for me with just relationships in general, of people that maybe talked negatively about Kobe
Mhm.
to me. Like, yeah, he is terrible, and these things. It wasn't helping my recovery, and they weren't doing recovery to get through what I'd been through, right? So they're
Yeah.
just like, he's terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm over here really trying to process through things and work it, and they're not. And so it was not helpful for me. And I did have to, be boundaried and say I can't be around this person.
Yeah. So there's this, I guess I'll say this. There's this thing with therapists that treat betrayal and sex addiction. And what it is if you've done this long enough, you know something. And what you know is if you validate the betrayed's pain, then and she feels seen and validated, then she'll trust you and she'll want to keep coming back for therapy. And you can keep her stuck in that pain and in that anger, and you can keep her as a client for a long time. But you're not doing her any favors, because she'll keep coming, feeling validated. And there's a point in therapy where you want to push her to really move beyond just the anger and the sadness, processing that and moving forward. And sometimes the betrayed doesn't want to do that. And as a therapist, you run the risk of losing that client when you push her to move beyond that. And it's not good for business. So I guess what I'm saying is there's some therapists out there that I know of that actually try to keep women stuck in a victim place because it keeps them as clients for a long time.
So how would you recognize that if you're in that situation?
You'll know, you'll feel it. If you go to therapy, you go to your groups, and every time you leave, you're leaving a little more angry, or you're leaving a little more depressed or sad about your
Or
situation
like, was it this? This is one I had. We're talking about the same things every
over
single
and
time.
over. And
No new skills, no working through something.
no, we're just resonating in this low energy.
Okay.
And
We had that. That's why I ask.
and it feels good at first, but after a while, it's like, oh, I just like if I look back on a year, like I really don't feel closer to him. I don't feel like healing has happened.
Mhm.
You really got to evaluate that. And
that sucks
Yeah.
because if that means we need to find someone new, you have to start again,
change it up.
and that sucks.
Yeah, it's hard.
Let me ask a question of you, Ashlynn. You attended a 12-step type support group for the partners,
Yes.
and then you attended it that was clergy led, meaning
Volunteer.
like
clergy,
it
but
was
yeah.
volunteer clergy who were facilitating, and then you attended a women's group with a therapist, with Amy,
Correct.
therapist. Was there a difference for you
Yes.
in those settings?
So this is why and this has nothing to, because it may work for you. 12-step may work for you. It didn't work for me because I like the crosstalk. I like being able to connect and to ask questions like, how did you get out of that? And how did that work for you? And that wasn't part of the process there. But in
At the
Amy's,
12-step.
right, in
Okay.
Amy's group, it was very educational. We were working 12 steps out, doing the 12 steps, like we're on step whatever. It was like, let's process this and let's connect through a group. Let's ask questions. Let's really figure these things out. And I said I didn't like it in the beginning because I wasn't participating.
Right.
And I've learned this as I get people in my groups when they say after
I mean,
weeks, I don't like
you're
this.
coming victim-y, shut down, angry.
I feel nothing. I'm just
Right.
mad.
Yeah.
And so now you're telling me to be vulnerable and to do all these.
Right.
I'd never shared my story out loud.
It's a wonder that you
it.
didn't love that group, Ashley.
Yeah. And so I remember telling Coby, I hate group. I don't want to go. And now I look back and I think, well, duh, you weren't showing up.
Right.
I was checking a box.
Right.
And so the minute I started to say, well, the first time I shared my story out loud, I mean, I'd written it down before, but out loud is so different. And it was within that group.
Right. Right. That's awesome. So you shifted, Ashlynn.
Yeah.
Coming back to your question, Coby, I've run, I don't know how many thousands of groups. And the power of a group is what you create collectively. And so it's not necessarily whether it's a 12-step group, whether it's a therapist run group, it's what, when that group of people comes together, what starts to resonate. And so like you can resonate in anger and shame, you can resonate in hope and peace and moving forward. And so I've run a lot of groups. Some of my groups have failed. Some of my groups have been horrible. And I disband groups sometimes. Some of my groups have been right now is amazing. And I have a men's group that's incredible. And because collectively those people come together and they're wanting to create peace, they're wanting to create healing, they're in a place of acceptance. And so we can talk about hard things. We can get really brutally honest with each other. We can see things like hope. We can see visions of happiness, and it's awesome. So as a therapist, I'll do a couple of things. So if there's a victim-y group that's just stuck, I'll bring in like a peer mentor or two of them into the group just to kind of sit in on the group. But I also know what I'm doing. I know I'm bringing in something that's going to help shift or push them forward a little bit. I will. Sometimes I've been in groups where I feel like I'm the only dog in the fight, where it's like they're all wanting to stay stuck, and that's when I'm like, hey, I gotta shift this. I'm gonna put one guy in this group that'll help him move forward, and one guy in that group. So yeah, I mean, it's not. You can go to different 12-step groups, and you'll find really awesome ones and you'll find not so great ones, but you'll find the one that you resonate with. So,
And I think this is why there is no checklist with recovery.
no,
It really is so different, and your path is yours.
absolutely. Which is, when you saying that, Ashlyn, is different than a lot of the information out there. It's, we have it figured out. This is exactly what you do. This, this is how you do it. And so people get stuck hearing from experts or whomever, like, this is what I do. And then they keep doing it and they're like, this isn't working. So
One other question on this thread. Is there any difference? I know, Ashlyn, you're an internal processor. Is there a difference in this experience with internal processors versus verbal processors?
Like Coby.
Or is it all the same?
yeah, I think
Maybe because I'm quiet. Is that what you mean? Like in group, I'm quieter.
Well, I'm just looking at from outside in. It would seem like it would be easy. Well, it would be easier for someone who verbally processes to go into a group and share versus someone, maybe it might be more challenging for somebody to be vulnerable who is an internal processor, i.e. you, Ash, to share, to participate, et cetera.
I gotta
Does that play
say,
a factor or
some
no?
of my most powerful group members and that just create love and connection in the group are some of my quietest group members who
Really?
just sit back and observe. And so I don't know if it's necessarily whether you're extroverted or introverted or, like, it's just, you can feel what they're wanting to bring to the group. Are they wanting to self-reflect? Are they wanting to move forward and find peace? It doesn't matter, I don't think.
That's cool.
So
That's really cool.
sometimes the talking really gets in the way. The talking is
Yeah.
shame. It's
Yeah.
shame based, and it's so another way that recovery drags you down. It's kind of different, but it's overwhelming. It's too much. It's out of balance. You go from living your life, bumping along. Maybe you're not very happy because there's issues in your relationship and there's an addiction you don't know about and there's shame on the addict side, to D-Day or discovery or whatever. Then all of a sudden, like, there's this massive new everything life lens that you look through recovery. So you're going to groups every single night. You're going to therapy once a week. You're reading books about it. And it just starts to take over. And it's like, oh, what about my other things in my life?
Yeah. I absolutely felt that. Did you feel that, Coby?
That it took over our life?
Yeah.
Looking back, I would say that I was, if I hadn't been working at home, then what I did for the first 10 months, which was individual, group, and 12-step every week, and that would have been too much had I been in the workplace. But because I was at home, I think that gave me a little bit more flexibility to put that much time into
Be
it.
focused.
Yeah. But had I been in the workplace, that what I did would probably be too much.
See, it was too much for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a job. I have my little social media business, but it wasn't, and I was a mom. And so to all of a sudden, okay, now we have dailies that we're
Right.
trying to, get in this habitual healthy habits, and then groups and therapy. It was a lot for me.
Right.
And it did feel overwhelming.
And I hear from spouses sometimes that, this sounds like a good problem to have, but it's like, he's never home because he's always at his groups, or he can't sit down for dinner because he's always taking a phone call from a recovery support person. Like his life is being taken over. He's almost addicted to recovery,
Which is a form of avoidance, is it not?
Totally. It's the same, and it's not balanced, and so it's dragging down the relationship, and it's not working.
It's
not real recovery
that we have, that I see this a lot, and I'm super mindful of this myself, because the motto for me is like, there's no overachieving in recovery.
Yeah, I like that.
There's no overachieving in recovery, meaning, and I'll share what my thought process was with looking back, and I didn't realize what it was at the time, but it was, okay, out of shame, because I had just relapsed, I'm going to read my scriptures for 30 minutes a day. I'm going to pray for 10 minutes a day. I legit thought these things, 10 minutes a day. Seriously? Really? And then I'm just going to do all the things. And that's purely out of shame. And I would do that for like 3 days because that was all the willpower that I had to do those.
Nice.
And then it would stop. And so I was trying to.
But in those 3 days, you're like, my life's changing. I feel good.
You're on the high.
All
And
of a sudden,
Ashlyn's like, yeah, right.
When's this going to end
day
again?
4, you're eating jelly donuts and not doing anything.
She's watching the clock, and day 4, yep, I see it. But what I began to learn is that I was trying to rate the loss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like recovery can be likened to growing pumpkins, because you plant them early in the season in a seed, and they don't harvest until late in the fall. And if I take the attitude of like, you know what, I'm actually gonna like cut down this tree so I can get more sunlight, and I'm gonna water this thing like double of what it actually needs, and then I'm gonna like put additional fertilizer in there because I want it by June.
Yeah.
Like I
It's
want
a great
by June.
analogy.
It doesn't work. It does not work. And the cool part about this whole concept is it does take time and consistent effort every day, but not lots. And it requires a rhythm, a lot of the harvest, in order to yield pumpkins. And recovery is the same way.
I love that.
And it just requires mental focus and consistent effort. And it requires sustainability. Right?
Well, here's the thing. So I love your analogy.
Thank you.
Except for one thing.
You
Which
like
is
squash, not pumpkin.
Actually, like the pumpkin craze. Pumpkin now, like pumpkin.
Bring it. I love it.
Yeah, it's too much. But here's the thing. Like, you're absolutely right. At the end, in the fall, you start reaping the harvest, and you've waited all year. Here's the only difference is with recovery, you reap that harvest. You get the pumpkins or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no winter. There's no rest. You're still nurturing. You're still growing.
Mm-hmm.
Them over and over again.
Yeah.
You don't get the big huge pumpkin and you've arrived and
that's true.
And there you have it, right?
That's true.
It keeps going and going.
For sure.
But the beauty of it is once you go through the process, once you grow it from a seedling, it will give you a harvest over and over again.
Indeed.
Right.
And that's a super important part of this, is trying to do too much, trying to accelerate the law of the harvest. And we just don't learn that way. Like we don't. That's why just a bachelor's degree is 4 years.
Yeah.
It just takes time to develop an individual till they're ready to work in the workplace. Or you look at a physician, it's like, I don't want my dentist who's working on me to, take an 18-month accelerated course.
You're absolutely right.
Why would
it's
I
a
want
process of learning and growth.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah. And if you put too much water on it, you're going to kill it.
Totally.
And that can happen with recovery as well.
Yeah.
So
it requires, sustainability.
Recovery is such a buzzword. And if you ask someone a definition of it, you get 100 different answers. Yeah. Just think about it this way: recovery is finding peace. It's creating love in your life. And all these groups and all this therapy and everything that I do, the whole point of all those things is to help you do that. And if the groups or the 12-step group or the therapy isn't helping you do that, then reevaluate. Yeah. Maybe going and planting pumpkins will help you do it better than meeting with the therapist.
But I believe that having hope is a key function of recovery with a proper therapist, right? To come out thinking like, okay, I was enlightened. I got some nuggets here. I have some tangible information that I can put to work.
Absolutely.
And I also believe that giving hope, for all you therapists who are listening, giving hope to your clients, the betrayed and the addicted, no matter if they're man or woman, is so, so important. It's so important because if they leave and they feel hope, if they leave and they're like filled in some small way, in some corner of their heart that it's possible, then, and not with a false sense of hope, but a very real one, then that's a super key function of a therapist, but it's also so needed week to week with recovery for the betrayed or the addicted.
Yeah.
Super, super important.
All right, you guys. Thanks for listening.
We always appreciate you listening. Leave a review.
Yeah.
Leave us a little rating on iTunes. We'd love that.
We'll mention you next week, maybe.
All right. See you guys.